Okay, so we are going live here, and I'm going to be setting up something where I actually go through and do some live coding. So let's go ahead and get started. To start with, I'm going to use something called Colab, and it's a way to execute Python code in the browser. Let's go ahead and find this. Here's Colab. Next, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through here and just look at making a new Python 3 notebook. There we go. Now let me show you a few little tricks here about this Colab environment that are pretty fun. So even if you're not a software engineer or you've never written code before in your life, pretty easy to get started. So we'll call this live stream November 15th. And to start with, this is one thing to check. If you go to this runtime box here, you can go to change runtime type. You can see that I've got Python enabled. And that's really the big takeaway. And later, if you wanted to do something fancy, you could enable GPU. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to start writing code. So to start with, how do you write code in Python? Well, you can actually type in the word print and put a open parentheses around it and say hello. And it'll autocomplete for you. If I hold down the shift key and return, that's the first Python statement. So this is something that you can try on on your own. Really easy to get started, and this is really the start that most people have when they start programming. You do print hello world, and what's powerful about this is I don't have to set up any software, install anything, and I can really start to understand what it is to be a programmer by using this Colab environment. The next thing that's important in programming is to create a variable. So here's a variable here. I'm going to create a variable called hello. And in order to create a variable, you need an equal sign. So it's HELLO equals, and then I can put a string together. And this is a piece of text. And I'll say, this is my phrase. So I just type some text in there. It could be any text. And again, I hold this shift return down. And that's it. That's a variable. And now that I have this variable created, I also can print out that variable. And there's an even easier way to print out a variable once you've declared it when you're using something like Colab. I can just type in that variable. Now if I type in that variable and I hold down shift return, it'll print out what's inside of that variable. So now we've actually done two really powerful things. We've used a print statement. The second thing is we've gone through and created a phrase and printed it out. Now let me show you how you can combine all those together. So to start with, we can make another print statement, and we again hold this parentheses together. And I'm going to use something called an F string. And this is really a way of formatting strings. So I'm going to type in the word F, quote here, and say, this is something I wrote. And now if I want to use that variable, just like a template, I can put in a curly bracket in here, and I can put that variable inside. And so now I'm actually not only printing something, but I'm using a template to fill that variable in. There we go. So from here, what's really powerful is that I know how to actually print, I know how to create variables, and how to put those all together. So let me show you one other tricky thing you can do with programming that's pretty fun, is you can actually make things happen over and over and over again. So one of the things that's kind of a fun thing to do is to take a phrase and make it happen more than once. So to do that, we're going to use something called a for loop. To use that for loop, I'm going to say for I in range, and I'm going to put in the word 5. And this is a way of, in programming terminology, to do something 5 times. And so this I is basically going to be every iteration of the loop, and it's going to create a number. And so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to use that same statement that I had before, put it inside of here, and it'll print it out 5 times now. Now if I do that same thing, it goes shift return, you'll see it'll print it out 5 times. There we go, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So now you're starting to see the power of programming. It's the ability to template things, the ability to make them do make that same action occur more than one time. Well, what if I want to take this to the next level? What could you do? Well, one thing you could do is you could actually print what iteration of the loop you're on. So let's go ahead and do that. So let's take that same phrase here, paste it in here, and what we can do above here is we can actually print, do the same thing, fstring. This is loop number, and I can put in this I in here, just like that, shift return, and there we go. This is loop 0, this is loop 1, this is loop 2. So lots of fun things you can do as a programmer, and a lot of it has to do with templating and also iterating through something and repeating it over and over again. Let me show you one more fun concept that you can do with programming. That's pretty simple. Another thing you can do is you can actually make Python a calculator. So if I type in 5 plus 1, it's going to be 6, and it'll just print it out. And then if I want to get fancy and use some of those techniques that we just went over, why don't I make a variable? This time it'll be a number. I'll call this, even call it number. Number equals, and make this 10. And now what I can do is I'm gonna make that number add with another number. So I'm gonna say number plus 5, and it's gonna equal 15. So there's lots of ways to take that power together and make these actions. And really, this is the essence of programming. So now let's take some of those other concepts that we just learned and tie all this together. So let's actually make a number that increments. So what we can do the same thing for loop, which is a way of repeating things. And I'll say 5 here. And then what I can do is I can print out the number. So I can say print number. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to say number is equal to plus equal, and this basically says add something every time I go in the loop, put something additional on there. And I'm going to say, in this case, add whatever is inside of this loop to my number. And so I'm actually going to print out before here, we can print out what's inside of that I. So I'll just say print I. So you'll see what the value is that I'm adding, and then I'm going to add it to the number, which we know is currently 10, and then it's going to print out the result. So let's go ahead and do that. And now what you can see is that I made a mistake, which is pretty easy to do. And let's see, for I forgot to put in. Let's go ahead and do that. And we should see a 0, and then a 10, and then a 1 and an 11, and then so on. Let's go ahead and see. There we go, a 0 and a 10. So this is loop 0, because with Python, they start with 0 when you go to range. And it starts with that, and it tries to add together 0 plus 10, and it equals 10. Then a 1 is the next iteration of the loop, and then it goes through and it adds that 1 to the 10, and now it's going to be 11. And it's going to remember that value, so then the next iteration of the loop is going to be 2, and then 2 is going to be added to the 11, and that's going to be 13. So you can see how now we're starting to put all of these concepts together, looping things, keeping variables together, accumulating things. So let me show you one more quick and dirty trick that's fun about programming. What we're going to do is we're going to write a function. And a function is a way of encapsulating a bunch of logic together and making it a little bit simpler. So here's an example of a function. So if I say hello, and I make a hello there, I can make a function that basically does something simple. Like it says prints, this is a function. And basically this is tying all this stuff together and keeping it there for me. And then if I execute this function like this, it's going to go through and it's going to print out that phrase, because that's the point of the function. And I even can do a loop here, and I can say for I in range 5 again, and I can run that function a bunch of times. So really, you can see it's a way of making things a little bit easier to run and encapsulating things. So let's now take a function and actually allow it to accept something. And that makes it even more powerful. So what we're going to do is we're going to make a new function, hello2, and it's going to take an x. So basically it's going to take an input, and I'm going to go inside of here and I'm going to say, this was given to me, and I'm going to put in x. And so now if I run this, I can actually say hello to, and I need to give it something, so I'm going to give it 4. It's going to say this was given to me. It's going to have 4. There we go. And now I'm going to go through again, and I'm going to loop through, and I'm going to pass that for loop inside of here, and you can see each iteration of the for loop. So I'm going to say for I in range 5, and then I'm going to run this hello2, and I'm going to put that in there. And I'll also, in this case, I don't have to do a print because the function itself has got all the logic embedded inside of there. Let's go ahead and do that. There we go. Perfect. So in a nutshell, we've done a lot of stuff in just a few minutes in Python. Let me just recap here. We use this thing called Colab Notebook, which is a way of executing code in the browser. It's very similar and almost identical to what you would do in a real project. We printed out some statements, created variables, made some loops, which is one of the essence of programming, is to automate things. And then we put a function together here that starts to encapsulate logic. And then we used a function with a input here. This is a positional argument, and then we use that over and over again. So in this lesson, did a lot of stuff that you can use on your own. If you want to follow along, every Friday, I'm going to do a live stream for a little bit at the Pragmatic AI Labs YouTube stream. I hope to see you there, and I'll check this code into a link I put into the video. Talk to you later.